The most impressive thing I can do with my right hand is retrieve my car keys from my left front pocket in a bold and skillful crossover move. After that, it's probably the way that I deftly switch between guitar chords. So today we're going to talk a little bit about right hand fingerstyle technique that isn't really traditional fingerstyle technique, but something that I think really sets itself up well for acoustic guitar, specifically if you're accompanying a singer or singing yourself, okay? So real quick, what I mean by traditional technique is when your thumb is kind of responsible for the low E, A, and D strings, okay? Like for a classical guitar, usually you have that where this kind of, your thumb just kind of navigates over the lower strings, and then maybe your pointer finger grabs the G string, your middle finger grabs the B string, and your ring finger grabs the high E string. So when you do that, you have like bass note options where your thumb can kind of float, and then kind of get like a... So for that kind of alternate playing, really the thumb being responsible for the lower three strings is a way to do it. But what I want to focus on today is this kind of playing where you're like adding a little bit of a percussive element to it. And really rooting most of your strings on the low E or A string, which I think is kind of like the perfect setup for guitar, specifically, like I said, in like a solo accompanying environment, because you really... There's just the way that a standard tuned guitar is set up. The E and A string rooted chords, I think, are the way to go to get the fullest sound while still kind of maintaining a little bit of character in your playing, okay? So we're gonna take this one chord right here in the middle of the fretboard. By the way, I'm using this Faith Guitars Power Guitar, really cool sounding guitar to demo this. And we're gonna use this one chord in the middle of it. This is gonna be a D major 7, all right? So the root note is the A string 5th fret, there's your D. Ring finger is going to go on the 7th fret of the D string, middle finger 6th fret on the G string, pinky 7th fret on the B string, right? So we just kind of have this contained 4-note chord in the middle of the string set, so the low and high strings are open. Now this is a good way to kind of start talking about what the right hand is doing, okay? So if you notice, my thumb is out a little bit ahead of the rest of my fingers. And what's nice about this is it gives a range of motion for your thumb that's not gonna get in the way of your fingers. And at first it might be kind of uncomfortable, because I remember when I was first trying to figure out this style, I would see other players do it and they would do it so deftly and just be able to move around like really fluidly. And I was always kind of trying to do this where my thumb was kind of maybe in line with my pointer finger, and then I had this claw thing going on that was really hard to get like a repetitive motion for me. Now again, this is just the way that I play it, the way a lot of other players play it. There's no really right or wrong way to do it. If you can get it to sound good and you're getting like a good clean sound, go for it. I just think this is like a really great way to start thinking about it and maybe kind of like, some good habits to get into if you like this kind of style of playing, right? So again, we've got 5, 7, 6, 7 in the middle 4 strings. All right, now your thumb is going to be responsible for the lowest 2 strings, and then your pointer finger is going to be the D string, your middle finger is going to be the G string, and your ring finger is going to be the B string. We're not going to worry about the pinky for right now, because that's some advanced stuff, actually using your pinky to play an instrument. Ridiculous. Not here, people. Not today. So really, what we've got going on here, we can just use these 4 notes and then just pick them cleanly one at a time. And this is a great way to kind of get into the habit of getting your hand in a repeatable motion. And the nice thing about this thing where see my thumb, again, it's almost kind of like pumping the brakes on like a bicycle or something. Is kind of the thing that you're going for. Because when you can do this, like I'm gonna strike the A string with my thumb down, and then I'm gonna bring the other 3 fingers in my hand just straight up, like that. And when they come straight up, they go straight back down, and they're always going to be in the same spot. So you don't always have to look at where you're going. Whereas if you're out like this sometimes you're starting, and you kind of bring your fingers off, now it's like, crap, I got to find and relocate every finger there. Which again, over time, you can totally do that. It's fine. But the nice thing about this technique is you bring it up and you come straight back down. And the added bonus there is you get kind of a percussive component to your playing. Now, a lot of fingerstyle players will grow their nails out to kind of get a sharper attack on it, specifically classical style, flamenco players, stuff like that. Some people use acrylics. I'm not really about that life. So one thing that you can do to kind of emulate some of the percussive nature is use the flat part of your nail to come straight back, and it gets that kind of click, right? So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna take this chord, I'm gonna strike the root note, I'm gonna come up on the rest of the chord, and then come straight back down, but get that attack of your nails against the string. and it kind of replicates the sound of maybe like a snare drum in a bigger band setting. Again, the goal here is to accompany yourself or a singer, right? So root, chord, hit, mute, however you want to kind of see that. But you can do that in kind of like a 3-step pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can even add maybe like another root note on the 4 if you want to count it, play along with a metronome. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. So if you're gonna like bossa nova or something like that, adding the root note to the back of a bar is something you might want to just kind of experiment with. But it's just getting a repetitive motion down just in those middle 4 strings, okay? Now you can also do these one at a time if you want to do more of like an arpeggiated sound to get more control of these individual fingers instead of playing it as a root and what I consider the rest of that chord. You do it one at a time like this. And I'm just going straight up the line. A, D, G, B, A, D, G, B. And the great thing is you can experiment with really any kind of chord voicing in your fretting hand. And it's always going to sound good because so many great accessible guitar chords are rooted on the A string, right? Now the next step is going to have your thumb floating between the A and the E string. And that's really going to open up a lot of different chords for your playing because, like I said, in my opinion, the most popular guitar chords, the easiest accessible ones, are rooted on the E or the A string. And the added bonus of that is if you want to start adding maybe like a moving bass line around your playing, when you're rooting on the A string in standard tuning, the 5th of that chord in the major scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right, where your ring finger, the octave lower is always going to be your pointer finger just 1 string lower. So if you wanted to do that, let's do that arpeggio thing again. We're just going 1, 2, 3, 4. But the second time around, let's grab the lower octave of the 5th note, right? The 5th below it. So 5A to 5E. So A, D, G, B, E, D, G, B. And this is a great way to get your thumb used to the interval between the strings back and forth. And it's always going to sound good. No matter what kind of chord voicing you're playing, unless you're playing some kind of like, diminished chord voicing that doesn't have the 5 in it, that 1 to 5 alternating sound is always going to be available on any A string rooted chord. Okay? The nice thing about this, too, is that really wherever you're rooted on the A string, because the relationship between these 2 notes, the 1 and the 5 in any chord, in any key, in any chord within any key, is so strong, there's going to be another chord voicing available most times right below it. So if we're thinking of this in the key of D or something like that, the A chord that goes with this is going to be like an A7, right? So a couple different things we can do. We can start with this chord here, alternate the bass note like that, just to kind of get used to the feeling of getting your fingers just kind of coming up and down. And I can just plant my pointer finger here because since I'm not strumming anything, I can just wait for my thumb to change strings and go back and forth, right? Or I can change the entire chord voicing from a D major 7 to an A7 or an A major, whatever. You have a lot of different options. You can even open up the bass in this position. The cool thing is you can just open up the A string and get that same root note, kind of change that alternating type sound. Or we can just start moving all around the fretboard with different chord voicings rooted on the A or the E string. It's a fun one to play. Original song called Parador, for those of you who don't know, check it out. But yeah, once you just start kind of moving back and forth, you'll see a lot of these patterns and the intervals in a chord scale just being the chords in any key, are going to start to make a lot more sense to you. So what I want to do now real quick is take a chord that's really close to this D major 7. We're just going to play a C sharp minor, all right? So again, this isn't even a bar chord technically the way we're going to do it. We're just going to focus on the middle 4 strings. 4A, 6D with your ring finger, 6G with your pinky, 5B with your middle finger, right? So this is a C sharp minor chord. We do the same thing we were doing before. We could do the root chord percussive hit, and then a thing that I like to do is actually do root, chord, hit, chord, root, chord, hit, chord. So whatever key we're thinking that we're in, a lot of times a move that you can almost always do is take the root note and transfer it kind of diagonal from 4A to 5E. So now we have two totally different chords. But what I'm thinking of, I'm actually thinking of this being an A major 7 chord that I'm going back and forth between a 1 chord and maybe like the 3rd chord in A major, which happens to be this C sharp minor. Again, a lot of these things, it's like, sometimes thinking of how many chords are in a key, like where do all these different chords go, can be daunting. But what's nice is like once you start incorporating different things into like different fingerstyle exercises like this, you'll see these patterns like, okay, this is a minor chord, whatever key I'm in, I don't even, I'm not even thinking about it. But I know that maybe this move right here is something I can always do. Or here. Just kind of moving around and really just kind of planting in a certain spot. That's why I love really kind of playing and teaching with chords that are rooted on the low E and the A string, because it just kind of works out where everything is just really accessible no matter what key you're actually playing in, all right? So the main exercises kind of for here is just to work on both ways where you're doing just kind of an arpeggiated thing where it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. To build that muscle memory into your hand where your fingers are always going to come back down where they came from. Because it's going to be like a nice even sound. And then once you have a handle on that, maybe start alternating bass notes. Then maybe changing the chord progression or the chord voicing. Maybe start alternating chords between different voicings. And then really experiment with different chord voicings rooted on the low E string, where you skip the A string, or the A string, where you're just kind of keeping everything contained in the middle. And then again, this is just kind of like a supplement of like maybe more traditional playing where you're kind of jumping back and forth thumb between the A, the D, and the low E string, right? All this stuff is going to help. Again, like I said, there's no right or wrong way to do it really, as long as it sounds good to you. That's like the most important thing. And as long as you're having fun with it and it's comfortable for you, that's what it's all about. I've kind of settled on this thing where, again, the thumb is out ahead of the fingers. You can get the pinky in if you want. If you're super fancy, there's room for it. If you're one of those pinky players out there, hats off, salute. That's fantastic. But again, just wanted to kind of share a little bit of stuff that I use in my own playing all the time that I think sounds really good. And if you have any questions or comments, hit me up in the comment section, Instagram, Twitter, or the website. I'll talk to you all soon. Thanks a lot.